It's got Ewen McKenzie, new head coach of the Queensland Reds. Ewen, first, if we just talk a little bit about you, we were just talking before just about being in a whole number of different environments. You started obviously with the Brumbies as assistant coach, then through the Wallabies, Waratahs, overseas with State Frontier, and now obviously the Reds. What are the key differences between each of those programs that will help you, I guess, moving forward with the Reds?
I think, I mean, it's obviously the philosophy of the game varied greatly around the talent available. So recognising the skill set you had and obviously playing to your strengths, that was important. The other thing is probably the culture that went with it. In some ways, the culture it existed. I wasn't that aware of the influence of the culture, perhaps the correlation with the culture and how you played and whether you succeeded or not. It's only when I look back at it, having been a head coach now for a while, you look back and go, trying to influence the culture and trying to manage the culture has actually got a fairly significant part, or significant role to play in whether you can actually achieve the results you want. And managing that more and buying into that side of it's been probably the biggest thing that I've learned as I've gone from job to job. And if you don't pay attention to that, then obviously it can be your undoing. Yeah, so sure. The biggest improvements you'll get will be in trying to manage the attitude of the group, not so much the improving passing, catching, and that. Obviously, the overall game plan is important, but the style of play. But how you marry that up with the culture and the attitude of the players is very important. How you recruit, whether you keep players, etc. The type of staff you bring in, all that ties into the culture, and sure. That's where you can get your biggest gains. In terms
of changing that culture, how long do you reckon it takes? Generically, obviously, it's all related to buying and that sort of stuff.
There's no question that your recruitment in a professional team where you're hiring and I guess firing, making decisions about the composition of your group, that takes time. But I think in terms of showing leadership in the culture and defining the culture, you can get onto that from day one. It's not the thing I've found. It's not about the culture that necessarily I want. It's about the collective culture, what people think is important going forward. Then as a leader in that process, it's actually making sure that people stick to what they said was important. So you really need to define it. People have to have some input into that, otherwise they'll never own it. Once they've had input into that process, then your job is to make sure that all the micro decisions you make, all the little decisions, the minute by minute, hour by hour stuff, is where you can start making headway. And you show leadership in that space by always referencing back to the type of culture or the type of behaviours that are important in the organisation. And the worst thing you can do as a coach is to ignore that. If people say this is important to them, then if you choose to ignore it, then you obviously get ambiguity. And what you have to do is have a very honest process to get to the things that are important. The reality is that in a contact sport, there's a lot of commonality in the things, but it has to be agreed by the playing group in particular and the staff, and ideally the organisation as a whole, that these are the important behaviours that get us to where we want to get to. And once you've agreed on that, once you go through a process and then get to that point, then it's your job to respect that and work towards it. The easiest thing to do is just you run your own race and just go off in your own direction. You can't look around and be surprised when you haven't got the buy-in and when things are under pressure. Yeah. The players don't see it the same way. You can't hold them accountable if they've never basically agreed to the outcomes.
Yeah, for sure. Now, obviously, I mean, if you look from a company point of view and people go away for weekends and they put their big mission statement up on the wall, they come back and then the first thing that people notice is that everything they've agreed on goes out the window straight away.
I think that's 100% right. Usually, quite often the mission statement's created by the board or the CEO, or and there's probably not much wrong in what's encapsulated in the words. That the problem is that there hasn't been any ownership of the words from the group, and therefore the group possibly lacks interest or doesn't get referred to.
Yeah.
It's a sort of statement you read once and it's at the front of some sort of prospectus and then it doesn't get referred to. But if it's on your wall and in your documents and it gets referred to and it's a reference point and it's measurable, the key word being measurable, you've got to be able to measure against it, measure improvement against it. And if you are making improvements, you're talking about the improvements against your mantra, or against your mission statement, then you can make progress because people quickly get the message that the words are important because they get talked about a lot, or the behaviours are important because they get talked about a lot. When people do things well, they get rewarded for their behaviour. People very soon get the message that these things are significant in terms of the day-to-day. This is not something you do once a year at a conference. It's what you do day-to-day, and that's the difference. Once you create the words, you've got to find ways to measure it and reward against it. And obviously, if people aren't delivering, you give them a chance to get with the program, and obviously the hard decisions get made if they don't want to get with the program. And so we haven't got people impeding the progress. You know, if the group's saying this is really important and we want to go in this direction and this is how we're going to do it, these are the behaviours, and there are a couple of people who don't want to go in the same direction, in fact want to slow it down, your job as a leader is to make the hard decisions in that space. And theoretically that group should be happy because in the end those people are slowing you down. You give them a chance to get with the program and get with the group. If they're slowing you down, you've got to make the hard call. So that's where you've got to you work out the culture versus the. This is where you get down to attitude versus talent, the big debate, you know. And I guess I've learned over my time as a coach that attitude is a very important attribute. You know, and it's up there on the par with talent. Everyone tells you about, oh, sign this guy, he's very talented. But I'm more interested now in saying, sign this bloke because he's got the right attitude. Assuming, and then you've got to work out with the talents if you can make the improvements in the skill side of it, knowing that the personality behind it is going to give you the best opportunity to improve the skill. If you've got natural talent but a poor attitude, the question is whether that poor attitude the team's going to suffer from that. You know, at a pressure moment in a final or whatever it is, you've got to work out. It's a different equation. Right? I always think the guy with the right attitude, you can make progress.
For sure.
They might never be as good as the talented individual, but they might give you what I call a budgeted performance. But they're there for you every week, and even if they're playing at 85 or 90% of the capacity of the talented individual, they're going to give it to you every week. So it's a more budgeted way to get through a season than it is just relying on the talented guy to deliver a match-winning performance maybe once every 4 games. It's what happens in the other 3 games that's what kills you.
So if you average it, he might be 60% based on the...
He might be 100. It might be 100 and then down to 60. The problem is you don't know when those performances are. If you've got a guy giving you 85, you know, across most of the positions in a game that's got a lot of variables in it, that's not a bad result.
Yeah, for sure.